Facebook Live. Jeez.
Yeah.
Who would have thought you had this integration?
No kidding. All right, everybody, what's going on? It's John Barrows with J Barrows Consulting and Make It Happen Mondays, and I am super excited today to talk to a good friend of mine who I haven't talked to in a long time, and one of the top social sellers on the planet. If you look at any of one of the top 50s or top 25, Koka's always up there. I kind of bounce in and out sometimes, but he's always got me trumped here. So anyways, welcome, Koka. It's great to see you, man. How you doing?
I'm doing wonderful, and thank you for having me today.
Yeah, man, we're super excited. I think this is going to be for me a really interesting conversation because, I've been struggling with this one for a while now about the whole personal and professional branding. And this is really more for me than anything else. I mean, obviously, if anybody wants to jump in and ask questions to Koka, you're more than welcome to. But, I think we met back when you were at Inside View, right?
Yeah, I think that's probably when we met.
Yeah, so and then you went Inside View did you go direct to LinkedIn after that?
Yeah, I got recruited right out of Inside View into LinkedIn. 3.5 years there. Moved all through the company. It was a great experience.
Nice. What was your mantra there? Like when you were at LinkedIn, were you kind of head of social selling, or what was kind of the position, if you will?
So my very first position at LinkedIn was a content and social media manager for the sales solutions department. It was the brand new business unit that eventually launched Sales Navigator. So I was part of the Sales Navigator launch team. I was responsible for the social and content strategy around that. The mission that we were given was to make LinkedIn synonymous with social selling. And I think we succeeded because I still run into that as a pain point in my current role as well.
Nice.
They're like, "Hope you did too damn good of a job."
Nice. Awesome. Well, and then you went off on your own for a little bit, but now you're over at Hootsuite, right?
Yeah, so now I'm at Hootsuite. It's a social media management platform. We focus on the enterprise. So my role is to really help the transformation of companies in the digital aspect, but the larger enterprise. So, the companies that have, 200-300 plus social channels, like how are they going to manage that? And then obviously my core talk track is always around social selling. So outside of the digital transformation of the marketing organization, which has been happening now for years, the marketing organizations are now seeing that the sales teams need to get involved in this also. So that's why they brought me in to be the subject matter expert in that space.
Very cool. And why? So I always like asking this question, which is just why? Why Hootsuite? Like what attracted you to them? I mean, obviously, they got a solid platform, but I think you could probably at this point pick and choose who you go work for, right? As far as because of your reputation and your expertise.
I do have that opportunity where I've been I'd say blessed that I've gotten to a point where I can actually have some choices and I don't have to just take a job. I get to choose where I want to be. So I've been using Hootsuite now since 2009. So I've been a fan of this company for a very long time. And I've met a handful of people over the years, and they've always had great things to say about the culture of the company. So when I was in between, when I had left LinkedIn and I was off on my own for a little while, they had approached me and they said, "Hey, we are building out our social selling platforms." Outside of the social media dashboards, which most people know of Hootsuite, they've got other products. They've got analytics platforms. They've got an employee advocacy platform. And they wanted to explore this idea of how Amplify, which is their product for employee advocacy, how that then feeds into the social selling ecosystem. So part of my role is to also work with the product team to start boosting up what social selling actually looks like outside of employee advocacy. So there's trigger alerts. So as a salesperson, if I've got an account in Salesforce, if that person that I'm attached to in the account in Salesforce says something on Twitter, I get a notification. Nice. So it's actually feeding me trigger events based on the accounts that I'm following on Salesforce. But Amplify is the mechanism for that.
Okay, that's sweet, man. I do have to get a little bit more involved with Hootsuite because I use all the free stuff, and I've been hearing a lot about Hootsuite for a long time, and I got to get a little bit more serious about that. So, but that kind of actually leads to the conversation today, right? Because what you just talked about there, those triggers, is to me, I look at social selling as two sides, right? One is the listening side for the triggers and making connections to people. But the other side is, and I think that's a little bit more obvious for a lot of people, right? To say, okay, you tweeted about this, I can make a connection to that. Let me either retweet you or engage with you somehow, whatever. The other side, though, which is the brand building side, And this is the part that I train on, but I'm also trying to experience myself and figure out because, with Jay Barrows, I went off at least, I think it's about 5 years ago at this point with Jay Barrows. And I fought real hard not to make it about me, but I had a whole bunch of people in this industry say, John, you got to brand yourself. If you're going to do this, you got to brand yourself. So begrudgingly, actually, but thankfully, ultimately, I ended up saying, okay, it's going to be the Jay Barrows brand. And then I started kind of evolving it and doing it very, very specifically. I wasn't about just getting 1 million followers. I wanted only to share out content that I thought was valuable and only get people following me who cared, right? But what happened was, and the question for today, the overarching conversation of today is the personal and professional. Because I had my Facebook page, right? My personal Facebook page, which I've had for, I don't know, however many years. And then I have my Jay Barrows brand. And over the years, they've started to obviously do this, and you've seen me up on stage recently. I used to wear a dress shirt, dress pants, and shoes. Now I've kind of evolved a little bit to where I wear my shell toes and I've got my jeans and, still a nice shirt, but I'm becoming more and more me as I evolve here on social and everything else. But there's still that personal side that I don't quite know how to interact with or combine, right? Because Doug Landis, and one more preface, and I want to get your thoughts on this, is I kept it separate from all business people for a while. And then my good friend, Doug Landis, who I actually became friends with, he hit me up.
He's a great guy, by the way.
He is. He's actually coming to town. I'm going to grab drinks with him tomorrow night. But he hit me up on Facebook, and I said yes. And as soon as I said yes to him, it opened up the floodgates to every other connection. Right. And so now I'm like, now I feel guilty because they're like, oh, you're connected to Doug. And then somebody else reaches out to me and I'm like, oh, shit. If I don't connect with them, then they're going to know. And so fine. Yes, yes, yes. And then I started realizing that when I started putting my voice out there on my personal side, it started to obviously impact my professional brand, good or bad. And so the two questions, I've seen you do a lot on Facebook right now on your Koka Sexton page. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And what's your thought on personal versus professional branding? Where's the line? And let's talk about the generations here as well. We got the baby boomers who are like, dude, the only reason I'm on Facebook is because my kids are on Facebook and I want to make sure, or sometimes their kids aren't even on Facebook. There's us as the Gen Xers who are like, okay, we kind of get this, but what should I be doing? And then there's millennials who have been online since they were born, but now working and getting into the business world, they have to have some caution here as far as what they put out there. So help me understand your thought process on personal, professional branding and as it relates to the channels out there.
Yeah. So it's a lot to unpack. But I'll start here. So at the very top level, the very first thing, the guiding light, my North Star is my methodology, or my mantra, that visibility creates opportunity. So my guiding light is visibility creates opportunity. So I believe that I have to continue to be visible. So with that in mind, all this other social stuff then falls into constructs around that. My personal is who I am. My professional is what I do. And so then I put things into those buckets. Okay. So, I did not have a professional business page on Facebook for a very long time. It was just my personal profile. And it was, I struggled a lot the same thing as you, is like, who do I let in? Who do I let out? Who do I keep out? Because I do have my opinions, and I don't know, sometimes those opinions can reflect either neutrally or in some ways negatively on my professional side, and sometimes even personally. But with that being said, there are very easy filters to put in place on Facebook. So one of the very first things I did as I started adding professional contacts or people who I may not even really know, but I've had interactions with them in other social ecosystems. They're like, hey, I want to be your friend on Facebook. And I'm like, well, I don't really know how to do this. So I set up some very basic filters or some rules in Facebook. So one, I obviously have public updates that anybody can see. These are the things that if somebody were to just Google my name and go to my Facebook profile, they'd see public updates. Yeah. These are either items that I don't care sharing with the rest of the world, like personal things, like if I'm at a Giants game, no offense, in fact, Boston did great last night. We got to, things, if I'm on vacation, things like that, like the more like broad stroking personal stuff. And then
stuff that could almost not offend, right? Like the stuff that's so neutral that, yeah, you're a Giants fan, I'm a Red Sox fan, and we could go after that. But at the end of the day, like, I'm not going to change my opinion on you based on the fact, well, maybe if you're a Yankees fan, maybe, but if you're a Giants, you're cool. No, but like that type of stuff, right?
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
And then on the next layer down is my friends. And so my friends are the people that you have as friends on Facebook. They can see all the stuff that you're sharing, right? They can see the stuff you're putting publicly and stuff you're friends. There's also another setting called acquaintances on Facebook. And so what I've had to teach myself how to do is when I'm adding friends in that aren't real friends, they're just people that I want to bring into the fold, but may not want to hear my political commentary, or I don't want to actually share pictures with them of my kids, for example, right? Like, I just want them to see the stuff I'm sharing. So when I share things, I put things through the filter. Is it public? Can anybody see it? Do I just want my friends to see the other larger bucket? Or do I want to just have my friends minus these acquaintances, so my true friends? And I remember posting something probably like 6 months ago about, if you're seeing this, you are in a very select group of people of my Facebook friends. And you had even commented on it and said, well, this is fascinating that you did this, because I think I got like 150 comments on this thing, because one of the things I was doing in that process was I was trying to figure out who else could see that, and did that person meet this criteria to begin with. And I've done this systematically over the last few months, where I will continue to post stuff to that very small group of people to continue to weed through who do I really want in this group. And it's not because I'm not looking for alternative opinions. Like, I'm not taking you out of that group because you disagree with me. In fact, I like that disagreement. It's just a matter of which bucket do I want these people to fall into based on the types of conversations I'm having. And so that's basically that construct. Now, outside of that, my personal brand is really who I am. My personal brand is how I want people to think about me, Koka, when they hear my name. My professional brand is what is that? In fact, the terminology. What's my legacy? Like, what do I want when people hear Koka Sexton in the business world? What do I want them to think of? I don't want them really to think of like, oh, he's a really fun guy. I've met him at conferences. He likes to chat about this stuff. He seems like, no, like when in a professional context, my professional brand is he's the guy you go to when you need to transform your sales organization. He's the guy that you talk to when you are trying to build a content machine that's actually going to drive your lead. Like, so there's a very conscious decision you made about what I want my professional brand to look like, and then how do I feed that? And what is my personal brand, and how do I want to feed that? One of the other things that I think you touched on was that there's always that sliver, that small group of people that you want to be able to share personal thoughts with, your opinions on politics, your opinions on, religion, whatever that may be. There's taboo subjects for the most part. And, some of that stuff will get put into social, but, the hard part about the world we live in now is that I have to actually keep that even outside of social, and it's really just personal conversations that I have, because I know how polarizing some of those conversations can be.
Yeah, I think that's what hit me was this past election, and that's where what I'm seeing Facebook become a lot more business oriented and LinkedIn become a lot more personal oriented. And what was shocking to me, I totally got it during the election when people would post stuff about their opinions. Like, that's what Facebook is for in a lot of ways. But what shocked me was how many people voiced their opinions of the election and that type of stuff on LinkedIn. And to me, I was like, whoa.
It was a very heated election here in the States.
Well, yeah, and regardless of what side you're on, I'm not picking sides here. I'm saying, like, regardless, somebody's going to post that. And I think this was obviously the most polarizing election that we've had. And people's opinions of you change, right? And so that's why I looked at LinkedIn and said, whoa, like, these people are putting their careers at risk here, because all of a sudden, their next hire, their next employer who wants to, or customer looks at it and says, wait a minute. And so I was cautioning a lot of people who I was connected with, saying, take this offline or do something else with this, because this is where that personal and professional stuff is getting too fuzzy.
Yeah, and I think some of it's naiveness. Some of it is, I don't know if it's ego driven, but my general advice to anyone is that those taboo subjects, right? Politics, religion, all those things, you should not be posting those things publicly.
Yeah.
If your goal is to build that brand, unless you're in that space, unless you're a political commentator, or
Sure.
if you're trying to get known in that space, if that's the brand you're trying to build, albeit go for it. But for most of us, that's not the case.
So let me ask you though, so you said something interesting there, which is before you said, hey, if that's your thing, but shouldn't all of us be focused on our personal brands right now, regardless of what your job is? And I mean that, I talk to sales reps all the time. Like I'm freaking out about artificial intelligence and, how, Skynet's here and they're going to start replacing our jobs and all that other stuff. And I personally believe that your personal brand is what's going to save you from obsolescence, right? Because, and we were having this right before we got on board here, like we're Gen Xers, right? And we grew up being brand loyal in the sense that we trusted corporate brands. Like I've been wearing shell toes since I was, 10 years old, right? Adidas, kind of pisses me off that they're cool again because everybody's wearing them. But by the way, sidebar, for people out there, the difference between old school and new school shell toes is fat laces versus skinny. So just want to, but anyways, we grew up with brands and we trusted Coca-Cola, McDonald's. This generation, millennials, absolutely did not trust corporate brands, but what they do trust is personal brands. And I use the dummy example here. I hate it, but it's true. Like Kim Kardashian, right? Like I can't stand her, but I gotta respect her for what she's done. When Kim Kardashian goes ahead and posts on Instagram, go buy Maybelline, right? 1 million people go buy Maybelline. And it's not because it's Maybelline. It's because Kim Kardashian told them it's Maybelline.
Correct.
And so you marry that with the fact that I think robots are absolutely going to start displacing far more jobs than they're going to be creating. And you think to yourself, like, who am I going to trust in the future? And that's why I think that personal brand, regardless of your role, whether you're 22 years old and, as a sales rep, an SDR or BDR, or you're 40, 50, plus years old and you're trying to get, to that next stage in your career, trying to figure out what that next step is. So shouldn't we all be, at least in some way, shape or form, paying attention to our brands out there on social?
So I'll say this. I think that all of us, everybody that's listening and watching this right now, and will be watching this after this is done recording, you do have a personal brand. And you even have a professional brand. If you are aware of it or not, you already have one. If you go and talk to all of your friends and say, what do you think of Bob, Sue, whoever it is, like they're going to have an answer. The same thing with all of your coworkers, right? Like, so you've already got a brand.
Right.
So what is being said is what you need to focus on. And that's why it's important that you are very conscious and aware of what that is. What do you want to be known for? What are those words that first come to mind when somebody brings your name up to the public? So you have to be very cautious and very self-aware and very deliberate on how you're presenting yourself in those different buckets to build that brand up so that you don't become obsolete. Before this call, we were chatting about, like, I firmly believe, again, like visibility creates opportunity. Like, I firmly believe that the only reason I'm in the position I'm in today is because I actually spent time to build up that personal and professional brand 3-5 years ago.
Yeah.
And if you're watching this now, like, where do you want to be 3 to 5 years from now? Right. You have to start setting the stage up for success today, as opposed to just trying to wait on serendipity and opportunity to unlock itself randomly.
So let me jump on that for a minute. So because I'm 1,000% in agreement with you. So, but what do you say to the kid, or what do you say to two people, right? The person that's not really been maybe Gen Xers or above, that it looks at this social stuff kind of with a half roll eyes of whatever, but says, you know what, I see the importance of it. I probably should start doing so. How should I get started? And then I think more importantly, because I think it's a major part of my demographic here, is that kid. That 22, 23, 24-year-old kid who's been social, who's probably every aspect of their life has been recorded or snapped or tweeted in some way, shape, or form, and maybe hasn't been all that appropriate. You know what I mean? Like college getting hammered and video of, whatever fraternity parties or stuff like that. And now they're saying, okay, what do I do? Do I change? Because here's another one. I see a lot of people changing their last name on Facebook. So if it's like John Michael Barrows, my name's John Michael Barrows. So you could search John Barrows and find me. And they're changing it to John Michael. So only people who know me would be able to find. So I'm seeing a bunch of my friends like, wait a minute, what? I didn't even know that would. Did you have a name change here? And what they're trying to do is hide, right? So my
Yeah.
question is twofold here. That kid, do they start trying to clean up their Facebook profile and do the whole acquaintances thing like you just said, and only let in those
Yeah.
people, but start being very thoughtful more about what they're pushing out there? Or do they kind of let Facebook be what it is, kind of try to keep it separate, and then go on LinkedIn maybe and try to be a little bit more professional with that brand? And same thing with the more senior people who are like, okay, where do I start? I don't even have a Facebook page. Should I start
Yeah.
one of those? What do I do?
So, you know, to the young SDR AEs of the world that are watching this, you don't need to connect with your business prospects, your clients, your customers on Facebook, right? Like at your stage in your career, like that shouldn't be a focal point.
Well, and it's weird too, by the way. That's weird. Like, I'm sorry, when a kid out of nowhere comes and connects with me on Facebook, I'm like, dude, come on. Like, no, I'm going to decline that one. Like, if you're an associate of mine, cool. For, like, some kid I trained, sorry guys out there, you're not getting on my personal Facebook page. It ain't happening.
Yeah. See, so, and I would think that most people are aware of that. Like, but some people are like, screw it, I'm going to try. I'm going to try and become friends with John Barrows. I do it all the time with celebrities, and every now and then I actually get one. I'm like, sweet,
True.
I'm not connected to XYZ. But anyway, I think that your professional brand is what you, as a young, career-focused individual, like you need to spend this in the areas where your customers are actually going to be seeing you more often. So obviously, it's LinkedIn. How are you actually building your professional brand on LinkedIn? How are you creating your profile in a way that is customer-centric? How are you then leveraging the platform? Because that's what it is, not just your profile, it's an entire platform. How are you leveraging this platform to be more visible, to then attract more of an audience, to identify, connect, and engage with these decision makers? I also believe that salespeople or people in general, they haven't been very invested in Twitter, or maybe they have.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't see very many sales professionals highly active on Twitter. It's kind of few and far between. Usually it's kind of, it's a gateway drug as they're trying to like consume content, but they're not actually posting opinions and thoughts and stuff like that. But I see Twitter as a massive network because of the ease of connecting and visibility of stuff on that platform to share, the content that is going to help build that brand. And again, because it's indexed by Google, it's indexed by like other, the search engine, and it can become one of those areas when a client says, who's this John Barrows guy, and does a Google search, like the first things that are going to come up are usually your LinkedIn profile, Twitter, maybe your website if you have one. Right. And that brings up another thing. If you're really focused on building this professional brand, if you don't own your own domain name at this point, you're failing. Right? Like I own the domain. I own my domain name. I own the domain names for all of my kids. I own my niece's domain name. Like the future is going into this world where you have to own your identity.
Right.
And you have to be very conscious about that. So, even if you're not going to use it, I do believe it's worth the $10 a year to own your domain name. Because
that's actually a good point.
Forbid somebody else grabs that and is using it for something else.
Well, you saw what happened to Marketo recently, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that was. In fact, I don't even. I know the CEO put out a letter and we won't get into it, but
it's like
auto renewal is your friend.
Yeah. Oops. But that
took out $1 billion company off of a domain name. So I think that you need to be aware of what it is you want to be seen for and what you want to be known for. Your LinkedIn profile, because that's where a lot of your professional contacts are going to come into play. But I find that Twitter is also that medium where depending on the industry that you're working in, it is a very low barrier of entry to build this network really quickly because of the ease of connecting and engaging with individuals that you're not able to do on a platform like LinkedIn.
So agreed. Where does someone get started though? Because for instance, when I first went off on my own, right, and people were, I can't tell you, and this was probably, like I said, 5 years ago, and I can't tell you how many people reached out to me and were like, John, give us your Twitter handle. We'll get you like 10,000 followers in like a month or something like that. I'm like, and just for me, it didn't register. I'm like, why the hell would I want 10,000 random ass followers following me on Twitter. Like, that doesn't make any sense. So no, I'm going to do this my way, right?
Yeah.
I'll explain what my way was, but for that rep who's out there sitting there saying, okay, first of all, I'm buried. I have so much shit to do right now. I got prospects. I got this. Now I got to add social into this world, and I got to start posting things. How would you suggest somebody kind of getting their feet wet in doing this in a way that's not going to disrupt, in a way that will hopefully fit into their daily routines or something like that, without being disingenuous? And I say that because it drives me nuts. Like, what's killing me right now is a lot of these social platforms, the marketing, and I know you preach against this, but the marketing the marketing department connects with all the sales reps, right? And all of a sudden just has them retweet stuff that the marketing puts out there. So it's just basically, but that's more of a marketing thing. That's not a personal brand building thing.
Yeah.
It drives me nuts when people just retweet like a 39-page ebook and don't put any, like, why should I read this? Like, okay, thanks for sharing the information, but why should I read this? So how would you suggest a kid, or again, a Gen X, or anybody who hasn't been involved here, start to do this in a way that is reasonable and doesn't crush my time from adding yet another thing I got to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think 15, 20 minutes a day at most is the barrier of entry. So if you can find 15, 20 minutes a day, like, this is doable. Like, so, without making this a huge product pitch, like Hootsuite, again, why I've been using them since 2008 was because they made this extremely easy for me. Now I just happen to have the opportunity of working for them.
Yep.
But once outside of the conversation of what your profile should look like, are you customer centric? Are you actually, is it your photo? Like all that good stuff. How are you engaging with an audience? So are you building lists of people who are thought leaders in a space? Are you building lists of, people who you want to stay engaged with? And then you set up streams for those people, right? So you can spend 2 minutes out of the day going through these streams and saying, oh, I like this. Oh, that's a really nice article from John. I'll share that, but whatever that is. When it comes to sharing of content, again, like, this is the visibility piece as well, is I have streams set up for content. So I have keywords that are set up. So as I read articles from either Entrepreneur, Inc., or, my favorite blogs, johnbarrows.com, whatever it may be, like, I will take that and then I will read it and then I'll reshare it out. I think that, that's the skill level one, is just sharing, stuff that you're finding. Skill level two is when you actually start adding your opinion into stuff.
Okay. This is where I'm getting at.
And I think that there's a balance between the two, because you can get over-indexed on trying to personalize everything through social, and that then consumes an entire day in some ways, right? Because you're trying to do too much. Yeah. But if you blend that approach and kind of weave together where you have the third-party content from John Barrows or from Salesforce or from wherever it is, and you're sharing that content out on a regular basis, you can have RSS feeds that port into your social channel, so that there's 1 or 2 a day that's going out there, so that you're always staying visible and active. But you are taking the 10, 15 minutes out of the day to actually find people that you're interested in following through some list, and actually commenting on what they're sharing through Twitter or whatever it is, or you're retweeting them, but you're not doing just a native retweet. It's called a quote retweet, where you're actually saying, hey, everyone, you want to read this blog post because, like, point number 3 was amazing to me. So that takes an extra couple of minutes. And if you can learn to blur those lines or blend it together, so to speak, you have a very, I'd say, consistent drumbeat on social, but you're also injecting yourself into that conversation as well.
Okay, because I'm right. I like the 2 levels there, right? And I think there's a third level, which I think you and I are at, where we create content, right? Where you actually write a blog or whatever it is. And I think that's a journey to get there. And some people have the time to do it, some people don't. But I think we need to live between these 2 worlds here. And somebody and I
between
follow.
2 and 3 is the engagement piece. So if
right.
somebody mentions you, how often are you actually replying to that stuff? How active are you in that? Like, it's in our world, when somebody mentions us or asks us a question, like, there is an expectation that they're going to get an answer. And if they don't, you will get called out again on social, right? And so there's another layer to it, that you have to be reactive to the stuff that's happening. Most AEs, most SDRs, the people who are watching this, you're not going to get mentioned 100 times a day. Like, that would be amazing if you were, but the reality is not. But you want to set yourself up for success, so that when somebody does mention you, you get that flag really quickly so that you can always be seen as that guy. When somebody asks a question, you are on top of it. And we were talking earlier about, the whole social selling space and like the video conferencing world. And it's amazing to see how, like, even in that world, when I was investigating either, Blue Jeans or Zoom or WebEx, whatever it was, and like seeing the salespeople getting involved in that and then replying back to them to see who could reply fastest.
Yep.
It was a fun game to play, but like that's a layer of social that I think most of us are not accustomed to, but we need to get accustomed to.
Well, I mean, it's proof right here. I mean, the reason I use Blue Jeans to do this Facebook Live thing is because I was doing it off my phone, and I'm a Gen Xer trying to figure all this shit out. You know what I mean? So I'm like, all right, and I'm like, so I have my little phone up there, and I'm like, all right, Facebook Live, like, and I figured out how to do it on my business, not my personal one, so I was happy about that. And then some kid hit me up, and he was like, hey, John, did you ever want to pull somebody into your Facebook Live sessions to do video? I'm like, shit, yeah, I'd love to do that. He's like, well, we can do that at Blue Jeans. I'm like, giddy up. Called the kid up. I was like, all right, what does it do? Showed me how to use it. I go, okay, send me over the contract. And he's like, it was funny because he was like, well, okay, just because you're such, we really want to promote you and all that other stuff, we'll give you a 10% discount or whatever. I'm like, whoa, hold still. I didn't ask for a discount. I'm like, don't give me a discount. I'm like, you had me at hello here, kid. Like, just send me over the fucking contract.
All the time.
All day. I'm like, now I'm gonna get a discount because you gave it to me, but don't give me one. So, anyways, but my point is, like, we wouldn't be on this if that kid wasn't listening. And
what network was that? Where was that conversation? Where did that take place?
That's a good question. I think it was Facebook. I think he hit me up on Facebook Live, and he was just like, hey, John, I've been watching your Facebook Live stuff. Love it. Have you ever wanted to? And it was in the chat. Yeah. So yeah, it was perfect. So let me get back to the getting started, right? Because you and I both follow one of my favorite guys, Gary Vaynerchuk, right? And one of the things that he says, which really struck me, I think this is the first way I got introduced to him, was the whole context versus content, right? He says everybody talks about content is king, content is king. He goes, fine, if content is king, context is God. And to me, that's sales versus marketing, right? Or marketing versus sales. Marketing is content, sales is context. If we as sales reps aren't putting any context around our content, then we're no different than marketing, and I have no idea why we're getting paid to do what we do. So that's go ahead.
I was going to say, I 100% agree with that. I believe that content being king was the mantra like 5-6 years ago, right? But companies realize pretty quickly that content becomes, over inundative into the market. It becomes noise without context. So great marketers are figuring out how to put context into things, and that context is put into play by segmenting your audiences so that when you're sharing something with a specific message, it's getting resonated with a very core group of people. And that even though that same ebook could be repositioned in a different way to another cohort of individuals. So I think marketers are figuring that piece out. But that being said, salespeople always have to have context. I can never reach out to 6 CMOs or heads of sales with the exact same pitch every single time and expect anybody to pay attention. Like, that is the problem with salespeople, right? That's why salespeople get a bad name, because there is no personalization in these conversations or these engagements that they're having. So salespeople are actually wrapped or bound by this idea of context. And I think it's great that you picked up on this, but I don't think that salespeople understand that terminology and well enough. But it's so true. Context matters. Why am I reaching out to you? Yeah. Why is this important? It's a thing that you're preaching all the time. Why me? Why now? Like that is context. And if I'm going to be sharing something on social, I should be pushing out some of that information along with it. Why you? And why do you want to read this? Or why do you want to consume this?
I think that, so it's interesting because it's if you look at every channel across, from cold calling to door knocking to email to phone, to social, the same fundamental rules apply, right? I mean, like if you shouldn't be blasting out a million template emails, because again, you're no different than marketing. You should put at least some context around what that message is about. Same thing with cold calls. If you read a script, that might have worked for Wolf of Wall Street guys, but in the age of people who have a head on their shoulders and B2B selling, like you can't just be ripping through a list and expect anything to be. Same thing with social. If you're just retweeting, you might get a bunch of people following you, but they're probably all going to be Tweetbot followers who will literally do nothing if you ever put something out there that you want people to engage with, right?
Yeah.
So,
and I think the idea that it's this blended approach. Like, again, as professionals, we're all busy.
Sure.
And I don't want to say like we're busy, like we're doing non-productive stuff, but like we have a lot of stuff on our plate.
Yeah.
And some days I have more time to do this stuff than others. That's why with this blended approach, even when I'm inundated, like when I'm traveling, if I'm flying from San Francisco to New York, that's hours that I'm not actually doing anything on social. But like I've set it up so that at least I know during that flight, I'm going to be sharing something. So I build the schedule up so that I'm always visible and I'm always appearing to be active. It was amazing really early on in my career when people were like, how are you in sales? All I do is see you tweeting all day long. Well, I'm not tweeting all day long. Most of my day I was trying to make my quota of 150 dials and 2 hours of talk time. But I had set the system up so that I was sharing stuff all the time on social while I had work to do. And I think, it's easy to do if you just align the right tools, put the tools in place.
I think what I talk about is like creating that morning routine. So, and this is what I'll explain, like this is where social kind of flipped for me. Cause I will say when it first came out, I was very skeptical. I'm like, I don't know. Right. And then I started.
That's how you and I met.
Right, exactly. I'm like, I don't know about this bullshit, man. I'm like, look, I'm all for listening and picking up triggers and cherry picking opportunities, but this whole, but where it flipped for me was when I started looking at all the information out there, and instead of looking at it as, hey, what could I retweet? What could I post? I looked at it as, what can I learn? These all these channels, Feedly and all these different channels, and Hootsuite does this too, to have information come to me that I want to learn about, right? Because I think it's a huge thing that's missing in the sales world, at least, is like the whole business acumen discussion is like, how are you a business, like people, technique, skill, process, whatever, but how do you just have a business conversation? How do you be a logical person that can talk about the trends in industries and stuff like that? So what I do is I instead of reading the morning paper or checking my fantasy leagues and getting all pissed off about that type of shit, I set up these feeds of, hey, like I'm fascinated right now with artificial intelligence. So I'm listening to the thought leaders on artificial intelligence and I'm reading the article to consume it for myself, right? To say, hey, I just learned something. And then when I learn something, that's when I put the context around that content and share that kind of second level that you're talking about. And that's to me the way, like I'm trying to connect with the Gen Xers and above with social and saying, hey, replace the morning paper, which right now, if you're reading the morning paper, you're probably just getting pissed off because I don't care what side of the house you're on, you're probably angry. Why start your day off that way? Instead, read the paper with stuff that you should be educating yourselves on. And when you find an article you think is interesting.
What are you actually interested in?
Right.
And what are your customers interested in? Like that's the stuff you should be reading. My morning routine, was I would come in the morning, I'd grab my coffee, I'd get my computer set up, I'd start thinking about who I needed to meet with for the day or the calls I had to make. But while that was happening, I was looking at TechCrunch, I was reading Entrepreneur, I was reading things that were going to, one, stimulate the brain first thing in the morning as the coffee kicked in. But also it was with the explicit intent of what's going to matter for my business, my day, with my customers, with what I was trying to accomplish. Not the personal stuff. It was even though it may be personally investing to me because I wanted to know these things, but what is it in that professional context? And almost just like you, as I read things, I'd pull out a one-liner out of it. Like, oh, here's the quote that ties all this together, and I would share that piece out along with it, the article. Or if there was something that I read and I was like, oh, that makes me think about these three other things, like that would be the headline or whatever the update was, and I'd share the article along with it. And then most of the stuff I would read would be like, this is really interesting, and I would just schedule that stuff out through the day so that when I got to my job and was actually like plugged into the matrix and working, this stuff was still dripping out into the ether. And I think that, it was like 10 or 15 minutes in the day, and I would build, a day or two's worth of scheduled content in that very few minutes.
Yeah. Well, and you can also do that. I mean, so you're talking Hootsuite does that. There's Buffer. There's a bunch of other, like where
Yeah.
you can schedule it out. And I do the same thing because I'll be training all day from 8:30 in the morning to 4:30. And it's funny because reps are, while they're following me, they'll be following me. They'll be in class. They'll be like, some of them
You
will
do
look
share
at me
stuff.
like,
Yeah.
did you just be like, that wasn't me. I did that earlier this morning. Or I think what you also can do, if you don't want to carve off that hour a day or half hour a day or something like that, you could maybe on a Sunday night go read a bunch of articles and
Hmm.
say, okay, I'm going to schedule these out. This one goes out on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday.
Yep.
And so all of a sudden, you're out there and you do it in a compartmentalized way, hour a week, 2 hours a week or something like that,
Yeah. And what bothers me is when I talk to salespeople who say, "Oh shit, I don't want to do that kind of work," right? It's something else we do. And part of me empathizes with that because I get it. We're all
right?
trained to do many things, but the other side of me says you can't overlook this because eventually you're going to get overlooked, right?
That's spot on.
You have to invest in yourself, and you have to invest in your network. You have to invest in your own growth, not just personal, like my own knowledge, but I have to invest in my career growth. And the best way I have found in this new era to do that is by being visible. And I could know all the answers to all these different things, but if the world doesn't know that I have these ideas and these thoughts and I can do these things and I have these opinions, then what good is that? Like I want people coming to me and saying, "Koka, we want to hire you." I don't want to have to hand my resume out to 100 different companies and say, "Please take me." And the way you flip that script is by putting yourself out there so that these hiring managers, at these heads of sales, heads of marketing, when they're looking for stuff, they're finding your name. You have to become the best marketer for yourself because nobody else is going to do it for you.
So I got one more question about the future, where things are going and why I think it's important. Then there's some bunch of questions here on the live chat here, but working at LinkedIn and working at other places, do you think that we're moving into a world where when we get hired or when somebody's considering us to being, for being hired, they're going to look at our network, if you will, as one of the top things on their list of criteria?
Yeah.
So for instance, and I'll put this in context, like there's the person who kicks ass, and we're going to be sales oriented here because we're on this, but I think this is valid for any profession. There's a kick-ass sales rep who's crushed their quota every single year. They've done their job, but they're not on social. They're just doing their job. And then there's the kid who's been doing well in sales, but has 5,000 followers, and when they tweet, they get like a 32% engagement rate, and they're super concentrated in SaaS in San Francisco. And do you think that is going to hold more weight in the future? And then the second part of that question is, do you think that's the way, for instance, territories are going to be split up in the future, where it's like, hey, Koka, you have a shitload of contacts in San Francisco in the SaaS world, so we're going to give you that territory because we think like you're going to be more successful there. Whereas John, you're in Boston and you're mostly, I'm SaaS too, but like, financial services, so we're going to give you that territory. Do you see that happening?
Yeah. So let's start with the first part of that. I believe that individuals who are consistent closers, that the people who can bring in revenue, will always be in high demand. If they're on social or they're not on social. The problem is that these people who are not on social and not being visible and putting themselves out there, you're going to have to rely on recommendations or not third party, but like your connections actually vouching for you in that space. I don't think it's going to stop you from getting a new job, but it will slow down that process. If you are consistently bringing in business and you're also known in the space for consistently bringing in business, you're never going to have any issue.
No.
The second side of that, if you are a average sales rep, but you are very vocal and you have built your network out and you are learning that skill, you are extremely valuable to the right company who is going to take you and build you up even further. As long as you have that foundation, you're willing to continue to grow, right? Like you're going to be able to open doors.
I'm going to give you a perfect example because I know you know this kid, Morgan Ingram.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Perfect example.
Morgan's 24, 25. And it's like this kid
never have to worry about a job for the next decade.
I mean, I look at his profile, and his profile is almost at my level, and I'm like, what the fuck, you little shit? Like, you've only been doing this for like 2 years, and yet your following's like, right here, and I'm 21 years in this industry. Now, the danger there is, people are perceiving him as a thought leader, and, we can have that discussion all day long. I mean, at 24 years old, how much do you know? as far as sales and business. But I mean, talk about a kid who's crushed it. And to your point, he's not going to follow the typical SDR, BDR, AE to the next level, right? He's gonna skip some steps. There's no question about it.
Absolutely. And I think, Morgan is a perfect example to bring up on this, because he doesn't pretend to be the be-all, know-all in the sales world. But he knows his craft. He knows the SDR role inside and out and upside down and backwards. I mean, so, like, if he's a thought leader in the space, like, I would say yes. But if he's not a thought leader,
for SDRs,
he's very well known as an expert in this industry and a very outspoken, voice to that world of, like, how do you excel as an SDR, as a brand new sales rep that's trying to get into this game. And again, like, because of what he tapped into and started building content from that, I mean, he still has a job, but he still produces videos, I think, on almost a daily or a basis. It's short form, it's long form. And, he's found that video is his medium, and he can create a 15-minute video as a 15-minute walk from the parking lot into the office, right? But he's doing this raw stuff where he doesn't need to be in a studio. So, like, it's not impacting his job at all.
No, all it's actually helping his job.
Building him up. Building his job. In fact, I was talking with him a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, one of the things I wanted to understand was, is this actually helping him build his brand, or is it building pipeline and revenue for him? And he's like, Koka, this thing is exploding our pipeline. In fact, he's in a management role now, so he's throwing most of the stuff out to his team. But he's like, of course this is helping. And I was like, okay, that is another, just a notch in the belt about why it's important that you build these brands, like how you focus on how you're putting your voice out there. Visibility creates opportunity. Like, how are you becoming visible?
I love it. And by the way, video doesn't have to be for the people on this video doesn't have to be it. You know what I mean? You don't have to be charismatic. You don't have to be great on video. Like, you can write, you can post, you can comment, it doesn't have to be video, even though video is probably the more popular one right now, right? But you can have a voice on all sorts of other platforms.
I'm not a big fan of video, but I'm getting more and more into it now. But video wasn't my original medium. Like, I was a decent writer. And so I used to write blog posts. And, that's how most people found out about me, because they read blog posts that I've written. But I also, being a student in the game, is that I'm realizing that video is becoming a lot more prevalent and a lot more easy to consume based on a lot of different reasons. So I have to adapt. And adaptability is what makes you survive. As a species, that's how we've done it. That's why we're all sitting here today and not still living in caves. We've learned to adapt. And once you stop adapting is when you start dying. So, I've had to continue to teach myself new stuff. I'm a student in this. As much as people think of me being as a social selling expert or a thought leader in the space, like, I'm constantly learning things, and I dedicate resources and time to staying up to date with what is moving in the space and where the puck is going to be in 2 years from now, so I can start skating to that now, as opposed to, like, trying to catch up to the next guy.
Spot on, man. That's what, I'm doing the same thing. Everybody who follows me, like, when I lit up Snapchat, I'm like, look, I don't know what I'm doing on Snapchat. I'm going to start trying to figure this shit out. So come along with this journey with me, and hopefully you can figure it. I'll show you my mistakes and whatever. Same thing with Instagram. I lit that up. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing here, but I'm going to start posting shit out there, see what happens, right? Facebook Live, same thing. So very cool, man. Well, let's take a couple of questions here. There's one that was actually on here before from Michael. Artie, what are your thoughts? I use LinkedIn to provide value to my prospects and don't include anything sales related. I use Facebook for my passion in sales. Is it a good idea to separate the two? So I think we kind of touched on that, but, like, let's talk about the separation of church and state, if you will.
Yeah. So this is my own personal belief, is that I made the conscious decision to blur all the lines between personal and professional. I wanted one Twitter profile. I actually managed multiple Twitter profiles, but for Koka Sexton, there's one. And, some people have, they'd have, like, for example, Koka Sexton Hootsuite would be my work one, and then at Koka Sexton would be my personal one. Like, I made conscious decisions in my career that it was always just going to be me, because I wanted to drive all those people to one place. I see people doing that on LinkedIn as well, like, which is really bizarre. But I think that you have to find ways to blur those lines between personal and professional, because nobody wants to talk to a robot. If all you're doing is regurgitating company content every single day, people are going to tune you out, or they're going to disconnect from you. People want to hear about, going to outside lands. They want to hear about your sports team. They want to hear about, whatever that may be. You have to be personal. You have to be authentic. I think authenticity is a whole nother conversation. But I believe that you have to blur those lines of who you are, this professional, who am I, and what I am and what I do. Like, and if you can mix those two bags together, then it's really good. So you're getting personal stuff about what I do in my life as Koka. You get professional stuff about, the company I work for or companies that I support. And then you're getting the general, other management, leadership, skills development stuff that I read that I also share through. Yeah. So it's, I'd say, you cut into the thirds or into quarters and you just kind of evenly distribute it out as you share stuff. Trying to segment your audiences in a way that, makes all professional conversations happen over here and all personal stuff happen over there. Like, eventually you're going to have you're going to look schizophrenic. Yep. Because somebody at some point is going to see both of those and be like, oh, that's kind of weird. Like, why would he say that over here, but over here he's actually contradicting it? Or it can be seen as a contradiction. So I just made the decision, like, just start blurring those lines and drawing those clear lines of when I connect into those individuals and when I don't. Facebook is still very personal for me in many ways, but I've started unlocking it kind of the same way that you have.
Yeah, and that's kind of what prompted this conversation. I think, I think that very tactical tip there of, maybe some people don't know that you can go in and segment people out to acquaintances, and then when you post, you select who it goes to. Yeah. I mean, that's a nice way of saying, okay, you're in my world, but you're not going to see my entire world here because some of it is just personal, and I just don't want certain people seeing certain things. So, awesome, cool.
Who wants a camera on their entire life? Like, I mean, we already live in that world. So, I mean, I think the idea is you have to find ways to share it to specific individuals.
Yep, love it. All right, so this one's from Camille. What's your strategy for increasing followers on Twitter? I think there's a pretty direct one, but there's a bunch of strategies. What's yours? Like, without the mass appeal, like a billion, just get a tweet bot or something like that.
Yeah, no. In fact, I have always adopted the mentality that I don't care if I have 500 followers or 1,000. In fact, most people ask me how many Twitter followers I have, and I don't know the exact number. Like, I believe I'm over 58,000, somewhere around the 60,000, somewhere in that range. But that number has never mattered to me. That's a fluffy metric. What I look at is, what is my engagement? Are people liking, commenting, and resharing my stuff? That's what actually matters. So, how do you build that audience? You do the things that you want people to do. It's the golden rule. And the golden rule is it's called the golden rule because it works across everything, right? Yeah. Do unto others as you want them to do unto you. Find the people who are talking about the things that are most interesting to you. Find the individuals or even sometimes the brands that are sharing the content that is of interest to you and comment, and reshare the stuff. Eventually, you start building your own tribe based on all of those the social graph of information. You're going to gain new followers that way. As you gain new followers, also, if they fit within that ecosystem, follow them back, add them to a list, stay engaged with them. There's no silver bullet. It's not magic. You have to be engaged in order to be engaged.
I love it. Here's an interesting one. I don't think this is going to be applicable to everybody, but I'm curious your answer here. Is from Jared. What if you have two jobs that are complete opposites? Do you create separate profiles?
Two jobs, completely opposite. So I'm a babysitter and I am a VP of marketing at a staff company.
Well, let's use you as an example. Okay. There was a little middle ground before Hootsuite, right? Where there was you went out there and did your charged rates for you to go out there and consult with companies. Yeah. And then, and say, and then you got a job where you had to it was Hootsuite and then you had your job. I mean, I know they're pretty close for you and you have your own personal brand, but what about a kid who's out there who's maybe a consultant and helping people in certain areas?
Got it.
You know what I mean?
Perfect example. There's a guy, I believe his name is, I want to say DJ? No, AJ. Ish. ISH. Yes. From LinkedIn. He is a DJ by night.
Okay.
And a sales rep by day.
Nice. Right? Okay.
Two totally separate jobs. Yeah. He is a sales rep at LinkedIn, and he is a DJ. Now, he has a business profile for his DJing, but his personal brand is that so what he writes. He says sales day by day, DJ by night, right? So he has found ways to find that consistent blend. Now, if there is a break, if there's some schizophrenia in this where you're doing two totally separate things that there is no way to align it. Like, you need to eventually figure out what it is you ultimately want to do. So are you trying to build out this other brand or this other entity on one side that has no relation to what you're doing, and this is just the means to the end to get to that? Then focus on that. Like, focus on your guiding light. Like, where's that North Star? Start moving towards that. If this is just your job, right? So you want to build your brand to be whatever that is that you're trying to get to. Now, if you're actually trying to do both and they're living symbiotically, you have to figure out what that story is.
Yeah.
So that when you're having a conversation on one side and they say, well, what do you do during the day? You can say, oh, I'm a sales guy, or whatever that role is, that you can say why you're doing those two things. Or when you're a sales guy, like, oh, I'm also a DJ by night. So I'm closing business, and then I'm going to the club and I'm spinning records. Like
yeah, and go check me out there.
It's kind of a very interesting way of doing this, but I think that's what you need to make those conscious decisions. How are you going to build that brand cohesively? I almost never think that you should have different profiles based on other entities that you're trying to launch, because if it's true to you, again, back to authenticity, your network, your connections are going to understand, because they're going to know where you're trying to get to.
Yeah, no, I definitely, I mean, the only ways I've heard a lot of recommendations for Instagram, because I'm trying to figure out Instagram. It's like, you want a theme on Instagram, for instance, where, like, if you come to my Jay Barrows page, like, you want to see stuff about sales, you want to see some consistency there. If I'm food and sales and then travel and then this, it's kind of confusing to the end. So some people on Instagram suggest having two separate Instagram things, but I think you're right. It's like, you have to back to your point of blending here, you got to start making a decision about, from a career standpoint, where you want to be, and is it you, is it the company you're representing, and what is your voice? Because to your point, if I see two different people out there, I don't trust you. I just don't, because now I'm like, well, did you say that because you were trying to attract this crowd or this crowd? Like, you have to kind of find some way of making it so your voice. Is that the red Coka or the blue Coka? Like, which one is having the conversation, right? Like, exactly.
It raises more questions than it answers when you try and do that.
All right, I love it. It looks all right. One more question here from Michael. Besides research on individuals or companies, how else can I develop better context on my emails or in social reach out? Okay, I got my opinions on this. Any thoughts on this? Besides research on individuals or companies, how can I develop better context on my emails or social reach out?
So I think, doing the initial research of who those individuals are, what the company is doing. I think one of the best ways, in fact, I would think that this falls in line with context, is, I was raised, in fact, in the sales world, lead with insights.
Yep.
So outside of what I find on your profile, that should just lead me or direct me to what insight it is that I'm going to lead with when making that conversation. So is it some interesting step? Is it a trend that we're seeing? Is it some research that just got recently published that also aligns into who you are and what you do? Again, if you're leading with insights, that's going to be the bow on the context of who that person is, because you're actually giving them a gift in many cases, because most people are not aware of all the trends and research and reports that are coming out there. So if you can wrap that up a little bow and then hand it over with that context, it holds a lot of weight.
Yeah, I love it. I was just going to jump onto, like, kind of the persona or industry trends, right? So if I'm going after CIOs, I don't necessarily, I'm going to do my research on you as a CIO and see if you said anything, but I'm also going to educate myself on CIO stuff, right? And read what CIOs care about, trends that are happening in that industry. And then when I read that, find it interesting.
And the terminology and nomenclature is so important, and that's where I think a lot of salespeople don't spend enough time. Like, for example, like I'm starting to work more in the financial services space, and they don't talk about trigger events. They know what they are. They call them money in motion events,
nice.
Right? And you can see their eyes light up or their ears perk up when you say money in motion, because that is something that they are acutely aware of and always paying attention to. If I say trigger events, they're like, yeah, trigger events. But you say money in motion, like, all of a sudden, like, you're speaking in their language. And I think that's what salespeople need to do, is, like, understand how do these people speak? What do my customers say? How do they say it? And then find ways to use those words into your conversations.
Love it.
It's mirroring. I mean, it's old school sales. It's mirroring.
100%. 100%. And don't pretend like you know their world, but know enough to put some
Yeah.
context and start a conversation, right?
Oh yeah, don't pretend, because if they know more than you, they're going to call your bluff, and you're going to look like a schmuck, and they're going to hang up on you. You're never going to get that business ever.
Yeah, exactly. That's like that's like the blessing and the curse of challenger sale, right? It's like lead with insights, that's fine, but challenge me, ooh, you better know what you're talking about before you
Yeah.
challenge me. Like if I'm a CEO in a company 20 years in and I got this 22-year-old pissant telling me how I should run my business, you're gonna be in trouble. So, anyways, we're up on the hour, Koka. I could talk to you for hours here, man. I always love catching up and just picking your brain about stuff. So I genuinely appreciate you spending the time here with me and my audience. Help me understand a couple of things. About like how to follow, where to find you. It's pretty obvious what you're doing over at Hootsuite, and then also because you're a veteran, how can we help out veterans? Because I know you're very active and you came from that world. And I know that there's a lot of need out there. So what can my audience do to help support veterans, ideally in sales? Because I think veterans are actually a perfect fit for what we do. So would love to just Hootsuite, follow you, what background there, and then also, what can we do to help out some vets out there?
I'm very easy to find. I am Koka Sexton on just about every social channel there is. Again, you have to find ways to brand yourself consistently. At Hootsuite, I am helping companies and sales organizations transform digitally. So, if you're a sales organization that is trying to figure out how to leverage social more effectively to grow, your pipeline, like that's what I do within Hootsuite. Is I do that with all of our customers. On the veteran side, I wish I could do more. There are many people out there doing a ton more than I am. But I am invested, being a veteran myself, I understand the pain point of going from military transitioning into the civilian world. In many ways, in fact, many soldiers or, military individuals have a much harder time than I did because they've been doing this much longer than I were before they had to transition out. Find ways, if you know a veteran and they're looking for work, just help them understand the world you're in. I spend a lot of time in every month talking to a veteran here or there. Like, I was just trying to understand, how do I get my first sales job? What do I need to know? And pointing them in the right direction. Again, I think I almost just said it, echoing what you said. Veterans make amazing employees. When I was transitioning out and coming into the workforce, people were afraid of hiring me because they thought I was going to be yelling at people all day long and, so strict and rigid. And I was like, your idea is like from like 1970 soldiers. Like nowadays we are trained to be agile, to make decisions, to, make quick, great decisions, and to be able to pivot quickly if we realize the data is not moving the way we need to go. And I think that soldiers are now are being trained this way. And as they're coming out of these deployments or out of whatever the duty stations are, like they need that break. And so depending on what that role is, I think sales is doing really well. Warehousing, like Amazon does an amazing job hiring veterans. LinkedIn has an amazing veteran space. So if you know of vets and they are trying to find ways, like just either connect them to me, connect them to other veterans, because it's just a massive community and we can all help each other to kind of raise the bar of like where veterans are in the professional workforce.
Love it. Thanks, man. And by the way, have you been following what Carolyn Betts over at Betts Recruiting is doing?
Yes, I have.
Right, because they're putting a big focus.
Recruiting strategy around it.
Exactly. So by the way, if you're a vet or if you know a vet out there who's looking for work, Betts Recruiting, Betts Recruiting, they're a huge initiative right now to help get veterans into sales because, to your point, I think that they'd be fantastic in this profession, obviously, because you're one of them, and I think that's proof positive. So anyways, we're wrapping it up. Koka, again, thank you so much, man. Hopefully I'll see you in Singapore next week, oddly enough, that we're both going to be there. Yeah, right. So, and I'll put this out there. It's on Facebook Live now, but we'll see the long tail. If there's any more questions, I'll be monitoring that and I'll get them out to you. All right.
Outstanding. Thank you, John.
Thanks, brother. Talk to you soon.
Bye, everyone.